Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for another week. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Del. Back for another interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, exactly. This week we talk about choosing our battles.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of things that I toyed today with what we were going to talk about, because often I want to start this off by saying, and this might sound like a pat phrase, but it really is true. And we may go into this in a whole separate episode, but in one of the spiritual understandings I come from, we talk about living in the feeling of our thinking, meaning our feelings are a direct result of what we're thinking in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say that life doesn't impact us and doesn't touch us and doesn't, have an influence on us. But I was very aware when I was young. I remember thinking around one of my very first boyfriends. I remember thinking to myself, God, you know what? I can talk myself in and out of love with him in a second. And it was such a great awareness to have at that age.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't understand it. I just knew it was a fact because I could see how my emotions could go up and down so easily.
Mm-hmm.
But what this really points to is that depending on how we think about a situation or another person, we feel that way about them.
Right.
And so the reason I chose this title this week is choosing our battles. Is it really is, before we go to battle on a feeling we're having or a thought we're having about a situation that we have a position on, it's really important to remember that we are actually living in the feeling of our thinking. Now, if we're in a low mood and we've got some stinking thinking, as they say,
Right.
we can concoct, a whole slew of things to be upset about. Yet when we're in a more of our natural state of well-being and more of a happy state of well-being, we're not so bothered by those things.
Right.
So so what I wanted to talk about here is to take that pause before going to battle with somebody. Number one, wait till you're in more of a settled mood. Look at it with fresh eyes. Decide if it's something that was actually just, built up into a storm because of the way you were thinking and you were in a low mood, or whether it's really something that actually does need to be addressed. If it's something that's really a behavior or an action that is really impacting the relationship. Does any of that make sense to you, Barry?
It does, and I want to add some more pieces to the picture.
Yes,
and also reflect back on some previous episodes. We talked about certain things like, when we're upset, sometimes to do something to vent the energy first can be a good thing before we have the conversation about what the upset was triggered by. So yes, emotions connected to thinking definitely makes sense in that context. Another piece is also some people, no names mentioned, but some people tend to walk around like either they're walking on eggshells, so they're worried about hurting the other person's feelings, or they're looking for a fight all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so their their beingness is basically like spiky, looking to be, just looking to bump into things and blow up balloons and make things really uncomfortable no matter what. So this conversation we're talking about is people who've done some of the work, so they're not actually that limited in their way of being. And so for me, the understanding is about choosing your battles or picking your fights, so to speak. And although picking your fights implies you want to add more fights to your life, that's not what I mean. But the idea being is that by choosing your battles, it's really about what is really important, worth fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the relationship is really just something you're hanging out in and it's not really working that great, maybe it's not even worth fighting about it. But if it's something that's really valuable to you, that this relationship has some impact for you, that's important for you to stand or hold for values that you want in the relationship, you can maybe fight with your partner towards the same goal.
Mm.
So this conversation has got more pieces to it than just two simple steps, but I want to make sure it's in the conversation too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a brilliant perspective because it really is. But going back to what I was just saying, that I think even before you are, because I love that. I love what you said about, is the relationship worth fighting for? Therefore, is it something that you don't just suppress? You actually articulate what it is that you're having an issue with, and because it is worth fighting for. But what
Hmm.
I'm talking about here is prior to that is to really take personal responsibility of, am I one of those prickly people, as you said? Am I
Right.
somebody that has all this pent up anger and frustration in me, and I'm just looking for a place to sort of, emotionally vomit on another person? That's a whole.
Exactly.
Or, or is it, or is it just that I'm in a bad mood and I'm looking at life through the lens of, a murky lens, and I'm not seeing clearly? So it's really that first line of defense before you actually even share with the other person that you really deeply care about and want to be authentic with and want to be honest with. Is
Absolutely.
just me in a bad mood that's looking to unleash, or am I somebody that just tends to be a bit negative, either the majority of the time or on certain days I wake up and I'm just not feeling great, so therefore I have more of a the glass is half empty today
Hmm.
perspective in life. But again, as I said, really recognizing that we can stoke our emotions via our thinking. We
Oh
can
yeah.
really, really write a whole drama. We can write a book about what it is the other person is doing to us to make us feel the way we feel. And
Hmm.
that's what I'm talking about here is acknowledging that we are creating uh, like again, as I said, life impacts us, but the majority of what we're feeling is 100% an inside out job. It's not an outside in. And, the many understandings called the inside understanding, or the three principles, or whatever it is that point in
Right.
this direction. And again, as I said, it's worth noting that before we point the finger and blame and keep unleashing our upsets on another person, that there's something we can do about that. And there's something really empowering about that. I mean, constantly focusing on the other person changing for you to feel better is just setting yourself up for disappointment and a lot of unnecessary, um, as you say, fights that aren't worthwhile.
Well, the thing is, what you're speaking to is really what we talked about way back at the beginning. We started doing a show about codependency.
Hmm.
We start getting caught up in the fact is like the other person is controlling how we feel, which is the trap we fall into.
Hmm.
People have been listening to our podcast over the last 60 plus episodes, 65 episodes. Hopefully, they understand now not to do that. So, what we were trying to explain here is really in a lot of ways having the self awareness to notice what we are being and doing and focusing our energy about. Because the thing is, as you said, if we walk around just in a bad mood, well, if you're aware of that, you don't want to take that out on your partner. Yes, you may want to ask your partner to help you lift your mood. That's a different story. But if you're feeling a little bit down or upset or feeling emotionally wounded, you recognizing that it's not your partner's responsibility or fault for that happening. And so to start having an argument with them because you're upset and they're not doesn't make any sense. But some limited behavior might be to do that. So one of the pieces is going to be being self-aware enough to go, hang on a second, I'm feeling a bit down. Let me just say, you know what? Let's not talk about it right now. I'm in an upset place. Let me go do something else to shift my mood, or let's go do something to play to get my mood elevated, something like that. Because
Yeah.
then it's not making a battle out of it. It's making corrective action or choosing a different path so you can change the state you're in yourself by consciously choosing that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's again, I have to really differentiate here between the codependency and the understanding, the inside out understanding, because codependency, without a doubt, we are attaching our mood and our state on another person. But
Exactly.
this goes beyond just that. This understanding that we live in the feeling of our thinking. This, it goes beyond just our relationships. It goes into our life, into our life circumstances, and I'm just trying to think of I know I've quoted him before, but Michael Singer, when he, his when he says that everything that happens in life is for us, not against us.
Yeah.
when we look at any situation or relationship and see the gift in it, immediately that elevates our mood. Immediately we see that we have that power, that free will within ourselves. Now we haven't changed the external circumstances, we haven't changed the person, but simply by recognizing where we place our attention, that magnifies, put it that way. So if we're placing our attention on what we perceive to be a negative about the situation or the person, then
Right.
obviously we are going to start feeling really negative. And then we
Hmm.
get the bright idea that maybe we should change the other person so that we feel better. So what,
Exactly.
so what I'm saying is, just as much as we might place our attention on what we perceive as a negative, we can equally so place our attention on what is a positive. Look for the gift, see the gift, and
Hmm.
focus on that, and immediately we will see that our feelings change. We start to feel lighter and happier, and it's not about suppressing. We're very aware. We're not saying suppress, go into denial. We're just pointing at the fact that we can choose. We have free will as to how we're going to feel. I
Right.
mean, Viktor Frankl, I mean, brilliant man's meaning of whatever
A
it was.
social meaning.
Right, exactly. Same thing. Had everything taken away from him. His external circumstances were horrific, but he knew that the last thing he had was how he could respond to the situation, was something that nobody could take away from him ever. Take away everything else, but that was his to have and his alone. So that's what I'm pointing to more about this is in this choosing your battles. Um, as Barry said, look internally first. Maybe the
Yeah.
battle is within.
Well, the thing I want to get back to, and to underscore this point vividly, yeah, and Viktor Frankl's um, treatise about that journey and being when he was in the prison camp, to the concentration camp, to really understand his ability to choose his own attitude was a gift that really tells everybody, all of us, that we have that choice. And so the thing is, when we are feeling that energy of upset that's coming through us, whether it is intentional or coming through unconsciously, wherever it's coming through, the fact it's within us means we have dominion over it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't think we do, and so we think we have to vent it out and throw it at somebody to make them feel something so we can feel okay. It's like, no, if we feel the upset inside ourselves, the key thing is it's inside ourselves. So then we have choice and volition about what to do about it. So as we talked about in other episodes, like sometimes that can be just do something physical to get the energy out so you can be free to be able to communicate. Because one of the things about the battles is the battles have heft or have emotion, have weight to them. If we have a difference of perception, feeling, understanding with our partner, we can have that communication on a much cleaner level if we vent and release all the energy first before we do that. And
Mm.
so the idea about choosing battles also is choosing when to have your conversations. And maybe you choose not to bring your battle gear with you by venting out that upset energy before you can get there. So when you sit down with your partner and say, I was upset about that this morning, but I want to talk about it now. I'm realizing this isn't working. Can we change something?
Yeah.
But done from a more equitable and amenable place generally creates better results. So that's
Absolutely.
the point. No?
Yeah, and again, that I love that exactly. Choose, wait for a time when it could be discussed with a level head, less emotion, more just sort of curiosity about how each other's feeling, how you can both benefit, how you can both create a more equitable relationship, a happier environment to be in. And like again, often in that waiting is when you realize, oh my god, that was so petty. I'm so glad I didn't say anything at the time, because some of us share every emotion we have up and down all over the place, and it can be, as much as there's sort of being authentic, they could be, if you do tend to be somebody that's a little nitpicky or focusing on the negative, then maybe some of it's not worth sharing. Some of it
Right.
can just be let go. Just that, oh, this is just a habit I get into of tending to see the negative rather than the positive. So
Yep.
that waiting allows you to let that go, because nobody wants to be in a relationship where they're constantly being corrected, or hearing where they're disappointing their partner, you know where they and often again, that taking things personally is such an important concept to remember, that often we make meaning out of something that has nothing to do with us. It could be that your partner's had a hard day at work, or it could be that they're, dealing with a health issue or something. It has nothing to do with you, but it can
Hmm.
be perceived or taken as that they're not, you know, as involved or invested as you, or they're taking you for granted, or whatever the reasons you can come up with and make it personal. So often it's just not personal.
Right. In fact, I want to add another piece of this because the thing that came up for me just then was about how the choosing of battles can also be an implication that you need to save up all your upsets, which I'm not talking about here. So I want to get that out of the way too, because it sometimes comes up where we suppress or just simply try to ignore things that are triggering to us and not do anything about them. And then what happens, we basically start building up like a kettle boiling. We build this amount of pressure and pressure and pressure builds up. So eventually we explode at our partner or just out in the world in general. And this is true in work as everywhere else as well, not just in relationship. And the thing is that we have choice along the way, every step of the way, to say, hang on a second, what am I getting upset about? What's triggering me? Why am I feeling this way? And do something about it in the moment with ourselves. Again, not with anybody else, just totally internally, because again, we have dominion. So that as things happen, we're not accumulating upset. We're making peace with each one along the way. So that by the time we do have something important show up, as again, choosing our battles wisely, that has its own standing, its own merits, without being on top of a pile of 17,000 other upsets we haven't done anything about.
Yeah.
So being conscious of this is important as well.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're saying there. It's exactly. I often have the analogy of, like, sort of, you're going for a walk and there's these great big rocks on the road, and it's like you pick up a rock and it's like, oh, this is a good one. This is going in my bag of woe. And you stick it on your
Right.
back in this bag and keep going,
Yeah.
and another one. Oh, and then he did that to me. Let me gather another one, and then another one, and then you're carrying this weight of upset. And I love what you're saying, Barry, which is basically, you can acknowledge the rocks there. You can even pick it up if you want. You can look at it and you can decide, you know, if it's worth carrying around or not, and just
Right.
let it go, put it back down. And if it
Hmm.
is worth carrying, around, then deal with it immediately. Don't let that bag of woe build to the point where you're struggling under the weight of it, and nobody could react in a positive or constructive way, because by then you're just so pissed off that you're
Yeah.
hurling all those rocks at them.
There's no win, but there's no impossible. You can't make. There's no way out of that. So
Yeah.
that's again another reason for doing this. Frankly, is the amount of energy it takes to tie all that stuff up is so much. Like saying, if you're carrying that big bag full of rocks on your back, that's draining all your energy. So if you can deal with them one at a time when they happen, it frees you back up to restore your energy, so you become more present. Because again, in a relationship, you want to be fully present with your partner. If
Mhm.
you're distracted by the 17 other things you're carrying around in your backpack, then you're not present with your partner either. So they don't benefit from you either in any way. So part of this is to really be, in a way, having a sense of inner hygiene, in a sense, emotional hygiene, to really have a way of navigating so that you become focused on noticing when things knock you out of center so you can come back to center more easily. And when you do that, you benefit yourself and your partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The so that word hygiene, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting one. Really thinking of dental hygiene here, but it's true. It's so funny. It's like, it's not letting the plaque build up. It's not. It is.
Right. Yeah.
It's carry on that analogy. It really is to take care of things in the moment and release them. That's the thing.
Mhm.
Release them. Because
Yeah.
the other thing we do is we ruminate. We grab on something and we chew it and we chew it and we chew it, and go round and around and around in circles. And often I think when we can look at something, we can sometimes even sort of set aside, like, I'm going to really look at this right now. I'm going to understand it deeply, understand my part in it, decide whether it's an issue that I want to bring up or not. And then, in that letting go of it, wrap it up. I mean, seriously, I said this to a client the other day, because there was some sort of going back to a situation where it was hurting her to sort of, keep reliving this thing. And it was, I remember I said, and it just sort of came into the top of my head, but can we look at it as a gift? Let's find the gift first. Let's see what
Hmm.
the gift was, and then just wrap it back up and return to sender if you want, but receive the gift from it. But have it be wrapped up and the bow tied, in the sense of, um, yes, things are going to come through our mind. We're going to be reminded of things. But to resist the temptation to really go in there and chew and chew and chew again,
Oh
and
yeah.
there's nothing left in it. And when it's going to do is make you feel bad. So it is
And,
that sense again of, if there is a situation that you has upset you, these are all the tips we're giving you here. One is
mhm,
to take a step back, see what your part, if this is something that you're just sort of, you've built out of, and mountain out of a molehill. Is it something that is worth discussing? But once you've chosen to let go of it, as we said, once you've not picked up that rock or not suppressed it, as Barry said, with the steam in the kettle, is to truly let it go,
mhm.
to not resist the temptation, because again, that's free will. The temptation to ruminate and to keep going back over things, that's our free will.
That's the key. And the thing about it also is that it's not your partner's responsibility to take care of you. It's your responsibility to take care of yourself. And when you notice that your feeling is depleted, that's a choice point you've made to let that weight carry down again, like that bag of rocks you carry on your shoulders. That reminder, hopefully, it gets really deeply seated. Is that choice to unpack that bag and to take the rocks out is up to you, not anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so the focus really in this conversation is about how do you choose your own centeredness, your own equanimity, so you can move forward in a way that's healthy. And yes, there are going to be times you have discord and upset with your partner, but how do you approach those from a healthy place versus the reactive, like throwing, like you said, about like emotional vomit. I think you said something like that about just throwing up on the person. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
there's a better way of doing it. And if you want a healthy relationship, it means being healthy in your communication with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And these keys and tips we're giving you sound simple, but boy, they pay off big time when you start using them in your daily life.
Yeah. And I was thinking as you were just talking about there, when you requoted my emotional vomit, a lot of this upset, it really is old upset at somebody
Mhm,
else. I know certainly in my relationships with men that a lot of my, I fess up, I did used to emotionally vomit, was really, it was really towards my father, not the actual man.
mhm,
There was such residue of hurt and pain from my childhood, abandonment from my father, that I would test men. So I would
mhm.
be unconsciously, I mean, this is obviously after years of therapy that I was able to look
Yes.
up and go,
And hindsight 2020, yeah, absolutely.
I was testing, but I would be critical to
Hmm.
test how much they loved me, to test how much they would give up of themselves to make me happy in a way. I mean, I know that sounds incredibly strong, but I think that's what we do when we test our partners. It's like, um, how much are you willing to jump? How high, it is narcissistic. How high are you going to jump to prove to me that you love me? But often, again, it's not, thank goodness it wasn't a lifestyle that stuck around for too long. I got into therapy pretty early on and got help. But it definitely, that's why we talk about that time to self-reflect, that time to sort that stuff out and go, oh, this is an old wound that was activated. I'm so glad I haven't brought it into this situation. I'm so glad that battle is something that is from childhood, and it doesn't belong in this relationship. It has nothing to do with that.
Right. That's the thing. And it is it is what I would call being a conscious relationship and choosing to play at a higher level. And that's why, I mean, that podcast is called Relationship Mastery for a reason. Most people aren't playing at this level.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're listening to a podcast and you're thinking about this as well, you're way ahead of the game just to be thinking about it. But if you're taking action from what we're suggesting you do, your paradigm of relationship is going to improve dramatically. And it is partly because you're learning how to be a better partner yourself by how you treat yourself in relationship. So when you're in a relationship, you can be more contributing and more um, sharing from an overflow and being less dependent on dragging the other person down because you don't want to feel bad alone. The whole thing about misery loves company is kind of one of the challenges in a relationship sometimes. When you're upset, if your partner's happy, you don't want them to be happy because you want them to be upset like you are, which is such an old and basic mindset, which isn't healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So learning how to be a partner where you basically learn how to be an autonomous, whole, complete partner yourself on all the levels, makes your relationship healthier in the second place too. So this choosing your battles, which we've made as part of the theme, is really more about how to choose how to communicate when things don't work.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Because choosing a battle also implies like we're looking to find a time to fight. It's like, no, it's not quite like that.
Exactly. Well, and the other thing as you were talking, I'm just thinking about is some, I often, you hear people say something, oh, I just want people to be honest with me. Well,
Hmm.
we do going back to how we started the show, and I was saying that, our reality is created by our thinking. We're living in the feeling of our thinking. That often what I think is really just my thinking. Therefore,
Hmm.
is it worth sharing? You
Right.
know, just because I might have an opinion that I wouldn't do something a certain way, or I wouldn't wear that dress or whatever. There's there's a British saying, I think is hysterical. I love it. It's like, don't tell her ass looks fat in it once she's bought the dress. Meaning, you basically you have to ask yourself, am I contributing in a healthy way here, or am I just, she's bought the dress, she can't return it. Now I'm going to tell her she looks fat in it. It's like, really, is it worth always sharing your opinion? That's the other thing with this, choosing your battles. It's like sometimes just zipping it up is the best thing.
Yeah.
It's not suppressing. It's just actually realizing that it's just my opinion. It's not the truth that needs to be shared with everybody. This is just
Yeah.
how I feel in this moment about this thing. And I think that's huge, especially in a world that I think is lacking in kindness. Sometimes
Mm.
you have to have that filter of, um, is this kind? Is it helpful? Or is it just ego? I'm just speaking for the sake of speaking. I'm just sharing for the sake of having my own, opinion about something.
There's a very old phrase which I use a lot, which is a good reminder, which is engaged brain before operating mouth.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
the thing is, sometimes we don't unfortunately think before we speak, which is why we get in trouble and why we have these upsets and say the things we know. It's like we know if we say this, it's going to be bad for us and them, but we do it anyway.
Yeah,
So, presence of mind and self awareness is the keys to start this process of how do you have healthier relationship communication conversations and how do you navigate so you don't keep falling into the pitfalls of reactivity and upsets that basically destroy relationships. So,
exactly.
be aware.
Yeah, and I love that the way you just wrapped that up there. But also, I just wanted to add, this isn't just about in your love relationships or your
No, from it.
this is how you are with your children, with your parents. Even we can often have opinions of our parents that are not always the best to share. I mean, again, it's that really at this time, they're not going to change. They are who they are. Past is the past. It's history. I mean, I'm not saying suppressing, but I'm also saying, exercise discernment and
Mhm.
discretion with certain things that you say and do at a certain point. I know I had
Absolutely.
a lot of upset with my mother during some of the choices she made during my life, but really at the end of it, I just thought, I'm choosing to see the good she did, and I'm choosing to have the last few years of her life, in a peaceful way with her. I wanted to just, it was like, I suppose I sort of buried the hatchet, put it that way. It was like, oh, just let it go. So again,
Mhm.
that's a big thing, what we're saying here in this, choosing your battles, really discernment, um, definitely authenticity and truthfulness with yourself. But that doesn't
And,
mean it always has to be shared with the other person.
and be self aware as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, self-awareness, the key to all of this, isn't it?
Always, yes.
Well, thank you everyone again for another fabulous chat, Barry. Thank you. And we will see you all next time.
All right. Take care of yourselves and think about your own self awareness. Be present to yourself.
Yes.
Good first step.
Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye. We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.